100 years of professional fossil collecting has produced a vast library known as the fossil record, which provides us with glances into the history of the Earth and all of its life on it. But it is not without its imperfections or missing links. Gaps in the fossil record are what people most commonly use to refute the theory of evolution. But really, our gaps are most likely caused by restricting geological requirements needed to make and preserve a fossil. Consider this. Over 99% of all species that have ever lived are now extinct, and there are only a very few fraction that are preserved as fossils, and even a smaller fraction still have ever been found. The ones that are found, however, these precious needles in the proverbial haystack, help us to decipher our past and understand ourselves. So what are fossils? Why are they so rare? And perhaps most importantly, how can we find them? A fossil is a naturally preserved remain or trace of an organism that lived in the geologic past. There are two main types of fossils: body fossils and trace fossils. Body fossils include the remains, such as bones or tissues, of organisms that were once living. And trace fossils are signs left behind by an organism indicating that they were present, like imprints, tracks, or nests. One of the first factors causing fossil rarity is known as fossil bias. This concept means that some kinds of organisms are found much less frequently in the fossil record than they would be if they were alive. Animals with hard shells and skeletons are well represented in the fossil record, but those with soft bodies like worms or jellyfish are poorly represented. As a result, we may never know most of those species that existed. Land animals are also increasingly underrepresented because fossilization most frequently occurs in areas that were once aquatic environments. But perhaps the most heavily underrepresented group is insects. Assumed to have existed in the largest numbers throughout Earth's living history, insects are very rarely preserved or found. Other factors needed to slow the decaying process to help fossilize bone and preserve tissue include low oxygen exposure, low temperatures, and high soil acidity. The next factor causing fossil rarity is the fossil sites require the convergence of three things: rocks of the right type, rocks of the right age, and rocks that are exposed at the surface. When examining rock type, the challenge is to find rocks that formed under conditions capable of preserving fossils. Rocks form in different kinds of environments, and these initial settings leave distinct features on the rock layers. Volcanic rock cannot contain fossils, as animals, as far as we know, do not live in lava. And even if they did, their fossilized bones would not survive the superheating conditions in which granite and other igneous rocks are formed. We can also ignore metamorphic rock, such as marble, that have undergone either superheating or extreme pressure since their initial formation, destroying whatever fossils might have existed inside. Ideal rocks to preserve fossils are sedimentary, like limestones, sandstones, and shales. Compared to other rock types, sedimentary rocks are formed in a gentle process, including the actions of rivers, lakes, and seas. Not only are animals more likely to live in these types of environments, but the sedimentary process makes these rocks more likely to preserve fossils. As particles collect and settle out, depositing on the bottoms of rivers and oceans, they gradually compress. This, coupled with the chemical process happening inside the rocks over long periods of time, means that skeletons contained in the rocks stand a decent chance of fossilizing. Most of the Earth's crust is in fact covered in sedimentary rock, but the contribution to the overall volume is relatively low. After identifying the types of rocks that fossils can be found in, you must find the rocks of the right age for the type of fossils you're looking for. Fortunately for us, the fossils in the rocks of the world are not arranged randomly. Where rocks sit and what's inside them is ordered and can be used to design fossil finding expeditions. Billions of years of change have left layer upon layer of different kinds of rocks in the earth. In most cases, the rocks on top are younger than the rocks on the bottom. This organization allows us to make predictions about what the species in each layer might look like. We would expect that the lowest layers would contain little visible evidence of life. Layers above them would contain impressions of a diverse set of jellyfish-like creatures. Higher layers would have creatures with skeletons, appendages, and various organs. Above those would be layers of the animals with the first backbones, and so on. This concept is called the law of fossil succession. This principle states that groups of fossils appear in chronological order in their vertical placement in sedimentary rock, meaning that the kinds of animals and plants found as fossils change through time. And when we find the same kind of fossils in rocks from different places, we know that the rocks are the same age. Rock layers are not always in this layer cake arrangement, however. The movement of the Earth's crust over millions of years can cause faults that shift the position of layers, putting older rocks on top of younger ones. Fortunately, once the position of these faults are recognized, we can often piece the original sequence of layers back together. This has allowed us to find some of our oldest fossils. So even if the conditions for fossilization are perfect, and you think that you have to determine the time period in which to examine, there's another huge factor that might prevent fossil discovery. It does us no good for our promising sedimentary rock of the right age to be buried deep inside the earth, or for it to be covered with grass, shopping malls, or cities. Paleontologists need places where they can walk for miles over bare bedrock and potentially discover bones that are eroding out of the soft rock around them. There must be little soil cover, little vegetation, and few human disturbances. Keeping these factors in mind, it may come as no surprise to you that a significant fraction of fossil discoveries happen in unpopulated areas or in hot and cold desert systems. With all of these features and requirements, you can see how fossil finding becomes almost like a game of Clue. It was tectonic during the Devonian period in the Arctic Ellesmere Island. Like any other game, skill and patience play just as big a role as luck. All of the conditions converging perfectly are rare, which are why there are these gaps in the fossil record, and why we cannot perfectly trace the evolutionary story of any particular species. But this is to be anticipated. Paleontologists are aware of this paradoxical relationship between planning and chance, of knowing where the fossils are, and also knowing we might never find them. But this is what makes the discoveries all that more exciting and rewarding. So I encourage you to just keep digging. Thank you.